As someone who's reviewed a plethora of PC monitors and soundbars, I was genuinely curious about the BlueAnt Soundblade. It's an under-monitor soundbar. And yes, there are some other soundbars out there on the market that are relatively compact and could fit in a similar sort of fashion, but this is quite unique, at least in my opinion. Now, at the time of filming, it's not available in the UK, but it is available in the US among a few other territories. It can be found for $200. So in this review, you can see if it's actually worth its price tag and also how it competes with some of the alternatives out there on the market. So to kick things off, I thought I should quickly touch upon what you get within the package. You have got the Soundblade itself, which is available in a few different color finishes, the white one being pictured. You've got a remote control, a AC power cable, a USB Type-C to Type-C cable, a USB Type-C to Type-A cable, and then a 3.5mm to 3.5mm auxiliary cable, with also some extendable feet. Now, these extendable feet allow you to effectively raise the Soundblade a little bit, just in case you have got a chunky monitor stand. This can be handy in a certain variety of scenarios. In my case, I didn't actually have to use them, and it did actually fit pretty flushly with my monitor stand, which is an aftermarket one that you can purchase. Now, the dimensions of the Soundblade itself will be on your screen, so you can weigh it up for yourself. Now, the Soundblade does sit above the monitor stand. However, I have been told by BlueAnt that you could potentially place a monitor on top of the Soundblade itself because it has got a rated capacity of 30 kilograms. So yes, you can probably put most monitors on top of it, but this is not how the manufacturer intends it to do. Not only because of the overall sound quality reproduction, but also potentially due to the overall longevity of the Soundblade itself. Now, in terms of the overall design of the Soundblade, it has got this sort of sleek profile. And here I have got it in front of a 27-inch monitor, which does actually fit pretty well. If you have a smaller monitor, however, it might actually dwarf your desk, so just worth bearing that in mind. And again, cross-checking the overall dimensions of the Soundblade itself and seeing if it will fit on your setup. I had no issues whatsoever, other than the fact that the monitor was slightly further back than I actually normally would use it. Now, aside from that, there are also some touch-sensitive buttons on the right-hand side of the Soundblade. It's effectively to power on and off, or indeed switch to source, and then you have got a volume up and down. Now, there is a small little audio tune that is played when you power on the Soundblade, and also if you're changing modes. Here's exactly how it sounds like.
USB. Auxiliary input. Bluetooth.
Now, those audio cues are certainly handy, but I really do wish there was a means of disabling them altogether, because when you are consuming any sort of media or listening to music, for example, it will briefly interrupt it. This perfectly brings me on to connectivity, and here the manufacturer claims it's compatible with PC, Mac, PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. Indeed, this is because the device has got auxiliary connection, giving you pretty much unlimited access to any sort of device, but you've also got USB Type-C, which is the preferred usage because it'll give you the utmost audio fidelity. I was able to test it with my desktop computer, which is running Windows 10, and I had no issues whatsoever. It was plug and play, and I was also able to run it with my Android smartphone. And yes, indeed, I was able to plug in the USB Type-C to Type-C cable that's provided within the box and play back audio via wired connection. Now, there is also Bluetooth, which is using the version 5.3. Although it's worth noting over here, it's limited to the lowest quality SBC codec. So you'll only want to use it sparingly because you're getting degraded audio performance due to the transmission loss that SBC codec actually brings. So with all that out of the way, let's get on to an audio demo. I'll be placing the microphone and the camera in front of the Soundblade, but I'll be also switching to my desktop setup, which is a Cambridge Audio CX-A61 receiver, which is connected up to the Q Acoustic 330i bookshelf speakers. There's also the Q Acoustic B12 subwoofer, but that won't really come across in the audio demo. Now, I do appreciate this is not a fair comparison, but I just thought to provide it because this is my day-to-day setup. Now, I'll be playing back a music track which is from Priya J titled Like Me, and then I'll be flicking over to a piece to camera where I'll be presenting the Hyundai Kona Electric on Totally EV. Make sure you check out the annotations to understand what you're actually listening to. indeed, when I originally reviewed the Hyundai Kona, there were not that many alternatives, but now you are littered with them. So in this review, you can see if this actually stands out over some of its key competitors. Now, at the time of filming and in the UK, prices start from £35,000 and extend up to £43,000 for the ultimate trim, which we have on review, and this is of course without adding any additional options. So to kick things off, I thought I should talk about its electric range, because arguably this is one of the key selling points of the older generation model. Now, at the time of filming and in the UK, the entry-level advanced trim is available with two different battery packs, 48.4 kilowatt hour and also the larger 65.4 kilowatt hour. So with the audio demo out of the way, I would just like to point out its audio configuration. And here you've got a 2.1 channel setup with 120 watts of peak power output, at least according to the manufacturer. You have got a singular downward firing 80mm neodymium subwoofer, and then you've also got two full range dual voice coil, or DVC for short, neodymium magnetic drivers. Now, the combination of all this does actually yield a pretty exciting sound signature, and hopefully you're able to pick that out via Priya J's vocals. If not, I can safely say that while sat in person in front of the Soundblade, I was actually left pleasantly surprised, although it does have a slightly V-shaped sound signature. Now, before actually breaking down the overall sound tones of the Soundblade, I would like to mention that there are three different EQs that are effectively preset. You can control them via the remote control. It's a shame that you can't actually control it directly from the Soundblade itself, meaning that you always have to have the remote control near you. Now, while I was actually gaming, I actually chose for the game preset, and I actually did a phenomenal job when it came to instrument separation. I'll be touching upon a little demo further down this video. But when it came to actually listening to music or even watching movies, I actually preferred using the music preset. The movie preset just sounded a little bit over bloated towards the lower end tones. Now, one thing I would really like to highlight before you potentially go out and buy the Soundblade is that it's actually very loud. Now, when I was using this in the evening, I actually found that I was using it at its absolute bare minimum volume, be it over Bluetooth or over a USB Type-C connection. I was running it at its lowest volume possible. On Windows, it was level 2. And yes, it does synchronize with the Windows volumes, and therefore means that there's no means of independently adjusting the volume of the Soundblade from, for example, the output that you have via your desktop computer, or of course your laptop or a console, or of course a smartphone. Now, this might be a cause for concern for certain individuals who want to use the Soundblade in a quiet environment, or for example in the evenings. If, however, you don't really mind disturbing your neighbors or someone that you're living with, then it's not going to be an issue whatsoever. And equally in this respect might be something that you might be looking forward to because you want something that goes really loud and doesn't actually distort all that much. And in this respect, the Soundblade actually does do a pretty good job. So with that in mind, let's get on to my sound analysis of the Soundblade, and starting off with the sub-bass tones. That's the low-end rumble sound that you'll hear, let's say, for example, if there is an explosion in a movie or when there's gunfire in a game. And here it's great to see that the manufacturer has included a downward firing 80mm subwoofer. It just means that the Soundblade doesn't seem thin sounding and rather feels pretty rich. Of course, it's not going to compete with a dedicated subwoofer unit, but for an all-in-one system and one that's actually pretty sleek, I was actually left pleasantly surprised. The same could be said about the overall mid-bass tones. They're certainly there. You can hear them, for example, if you're listening to R&B, D&B or EDM tracks, and you can also feel them due to the fact of what you have actually got in front of you. Now, I will say, however, that the bass does feel a little bit over bloated, and it could actually do with a little bit of an EQ. Unfortunately, you haven't got that via the Soundblade unit itself, but if you have got, let's say, a desktop computer, you might want to EQ a little bit here in order to decrease the overall mid-bass impact, but that is, of course, subjective. Now, one of the weakest points when it comes to the overall sound signature is in terms of the overall mid-range. Hopefully you were able to pick that out when I was comparing and contrasting with my Q Acoustic bookshelf speakers, that the mids feel quite recessed. Indeed, over here, while listening to, let's say, Priya J's vocals, or just listening back to my piece to camera on Totally EV, I was able to quickly note that it just sounded quite recessed. Now, granted, the comparison here that I'm making with my bookshelf speakers is really unfair, but having reviewed over 600 audio-related devices, I can say that for a sound equipment that comes in at this sort of price point, and even, let's say, a soundbar more specifically, I do think it's actually very much acceptable. Sure enough, some people will want a bit more that forward sounding mids and have those vocals come out to the foreground, and it's unfortunate over here that you haven't got an EQ to have, let's say, a podcast function or something like that, which would really boost out the mids. But nonetheless, over here, if you're just going to be consuming regular media or, for example, gaming, I think you'll still be pretty happy. Now, as for the highs, they extend relatively well, but do sound a little bit rolled off because they haven't got dedicated tweeters. Instead, you've got those full range drivers that are equipped of doing pretty much everything. And as such means that the overall sparkle at the top end is there, but again, it's not going to compete with speakers that have got dedicated tweeters, or of course, those larger units out there on the market that will just have a little bit more space to breathe. Now, in terms of the overall soundstage, this is something that really took me by surprise. See, I was expecting a little bit of a closed sound, and yet again, it's not going to compete with larger bookshelf speakers, but for a speaker of its size, I was really impressed, specifically when it came to the overall instrument separation and the positional cues, be it when I was listening to music, watching movies, watching some YouTube content, or of course, if I was gaming. Now, to give you a gaming demo, I'll be placing the camera and the microphone, although the microphone will be slightly angled because I have to game and I have to sit in front of the monitor and of course the Soundblade, and I'll be playing a game Counter-Strike 2, which is of course very much positional awareness is going to be one of the key fortes of this game, and also playing a racing game as well, a very casual racing game called Beach Buggy Racing 2. So hopefully the audio demo will give you a little indication of how it performs while you are gaming. Now, yet again, an audio demo over YouTube is not going to be ideal, but hopefully it gave you a little bit of a taster. What I can say is that when I was playing a game like Counter-Strike 2, using the game mode preset was actually a game changer. I'm sorry for the pun there, but it really did make a massive difference because the positional cues became even more apparent. Sure enough, the game mode doesn't really prioritize the overall audio fidelity when it comes to vocals and everything like that, but when it came to positional cues, I could hear footsteps from left and right and could easily differentiate to it. So it seems like the manufacturers really thought this through, and means that, well, for gamers, you will actually be really pleased by using the game mode. If you use the music and movie mode, it's still actually very good, but I don't think it's as pinpoint accurate. Now, as for playing regular games, I was just really impressed. In this respect, I ran it on the movie or the music preset, and it gave me a good sort of fulfillment across the sound frequency range, and also therefore kept me quite engaged with the game I was playing. Now, how does this all make any sort of relevance to the overall soundstage? Well, be it if you're going to be gaming or not, you're actually going to get a pretty engaging audio sound from the Soundblade, and despite its overall slim profile and size, it is actually very good, and arguably one of the best that I've come across for a product of its sort of class. Now, what I'm trying to effectively convey in this review is the fact that I've actually been left pleasantly surprised of the Soundblade. Would I own it myself? No, because I would buy a set of bookshelf speakers, and the fact that I do like listening to music sometimes in the evening without using headphones means that it's just a little bit too loud. But nonetheless, I really do think there is a market for it. It's really sleek and stylish, has got fantastic connectivity, does actually do well across the sound frequency range, all while being a little bit V-shaped and having recessed mids, and it's also quite a nice looking device that should fit on most sorts of setups. So as a result of all of this, and given its overall price point of $200, I can give it my Best Buy award. Now, I'd be curious to know what you make of the Soundblade down in the comment section below, and if you feel it's something that you would actually like to have in your setup. Now, if you have enjoyed this detailed independent review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing, and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Totally Dubbed, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.